Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a review of the Sinners movie, directed and written by Ryan Coogler. Now to begin, I have to say, just right off the bat before we even get into any thoughts and opinions, this is a 10 out of 10 movie, one of those movies that literally just stay with you and you'll watch again and again and again and again and again because it was just so good. We'll get into why and you'll know why I'm thinking this way at the end of my review, if you care to stay that long, because I know everybody's attention spans these days are minimal, just like my own. This movie is both historically amazing and complex, as well as it dips into mythology and fantasy and horror, but love. I mean, Ryan Coogler, who did the Black Panther films for Marvel, really tapped once again into that formula that worked so well with the Black Panther films, both the first and the second, where there's so much attention and care and detail into his work. It really transcends from the script that he ends up writing, and it becomes so well realized, and the characters are so fully formed and fleshed out that across his writing, across anything he's done, I don't know, I get awestruck and astounded as a writer myself at how amazing his ability is to draw upon past horror, like real life horror that happened to human beings, and, you know, really this film and the social commentary that comes along with that. Like this film, the horror aspect is supposed to be vampires, but really take away the vampires and the horror aspect is just the historical fact of slavery in America and the Deep South. And I think it is perfect. I don't think I can describe this movie as any other way. But okay, other than my ramblings about how good Ryan Coogler is, let us get into my thoughts on this movie. I mean, I have sort of touched on it before, but in my notes, I've underlined genius of Ryan Coogler, which I've already said and kind of touched on, but I'll go into why a bit more here. I feel like the characters, as I've touched on as well, are so grounded and human and real. Even the enemies, who are vampires or KKK members, it's still based on reality and truth. And the characters he's created, Stack and Smoke here, you sympathize with them so much, as well as like Annie or Grace or Perlene or Sammy, Preacher Boy, even Delta Slim, Cornbread, all of them, and Mary. Everyone is in this movie a fully formed human being that you care, and that's down to the fact that Ryan Coogler takes exceptional care. I keep saying the word care, but Ryan Coogler takes exceptional care of the narrative and the plot and the pacing of this movie. You spend a good an hour, I would say an hour and 20-ish minutes before we even get to the juke joint scene where things start taking a turn. But in that hour and 20 minutes, what you do is get a feel for every single character and a glimpse in, just a small glimpse, but it's a glimpse enough into the lives of these people to connect them into the world that Ryan Coogler's created back in the Deep South. In such minimal time, a flaw pointed out, or as well as the fact they're so grounded in reality. Like Mary is at the train station going off to her husband, and I'm pretty sure maybe child, I'm not sure if it was children, but Mary's off at the train station waiting to board the train to go to her husband, where she then runs into Stack and she's like, this rat bastard, and then she's like, I'm gonna go give him a piece of my mind, because it's been 7 years since the twins have come back to this particular area of the world Ryan Coogler's created. So even there, you're like, oh, okay, so she's got a husband, but she's still deeply in love with Stack and hasn't moved past the trauma he put her through by abandoning her, because they grew up together. And that is the moment where you have so much complexity within such a small introduction to all these characters. You learn they're ex-lovers, but they also grew up as siblings, not obviously biological blood siblings, just the fact that Mary's mum took in the twins when their parents were dead and gone. And you learn so much about these people that you want to know more about them. They've clearly got fleshed out backstories that you want to dive into a little further. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying, due to the lengthy introduction to every single one of these characters, you end up caring for them. And I think so often in a horror or a thriller movie, we saw this in Wolfman to some extent, and like the Scream movies, the slasher horrors movies, so often you end up spending only about 10 minutes-ish, if that, with characters before they get killed. You don't really care that they're dying. Here, because we spend so much time with them, I don't want anybody to die, and I care about everybody equally. Already from the trailer, Mary's a vampire at one point, and I thought she started off, based on the trailers, I thought she started off as one of these vampire gang people, but the fact she wasn't, it sort of psychologically twists your mind anyway, because she's going to be a vampire, but you start off with a human, and at least she's doomed. Creates that really sad sense of morbidness for Mary, because you know where she's ending up, which is dead. On the themes of like genre of this film, it's like a horror thriller, whatever, but it's all fantasy because of the vampires. But here, I think that it should also be love. There's a romance film, there's so much love for a multitude of things here. For example, there's Smoke and Annie, Stack with Mary, Bo and Grace, and then you've also got the love of the blues and that style of music, and the love of a community which have been unfairly persecuted. The fact that there's so much levels of love in this film, you know, and so much grief in this film, and even the vampires to some extent love music, which is such a unique take on vampires, but they love, I think it's the fact they've loved in their life as their human version before they've turned into a vampire. And we'll get onto this in Remic's section, but the fact he's after Preacher Boy because he's one of those people that can bring the past and present together means the vampires, or at least Remic, is drawn to him because he wants to see people that have died. And if Preacher Boy is turned into a vampire and sings for them, they'll all be able to see the people in the past who have died because they'll come back briefly for a song or a dance. And that's what draws Remic to Preacher Boy. But again, it's love. What is it? Who is it that Remic's loved that he's lost in his life that he wants to see again? And also the love down from not just between two adults, but a parent and a child, you know, with Lisa, Grace, and Bo, that kind of love. So now I've talked about the blues, we can go into the next bit, transitioning well into the section of this review about the music. Okay, cannot be said otherwise. I keep saying the word phenomenal because it truly is. This soundtrack, the songs, the singing, the way that it's put together, even the instrumentals, it all just works so well to build a plot that feels deeply rooted in historical accuracy, thanks to Ryan Coogler's keen eye and attention to detail, to the point where I feel like if I was a vampire in this world, I'd also be seeking out Preacher Boy and being like drawn to him like a moth to flame and being like, oh, that's a beautiful voice, and oh, hey, these songs great. I mean, Remic has been around, and the vampires in this movie have been around God knows how long, and obviously within history, the sounds of music changes constantly, and in the 1930s, a heavy period for at least the American South of the blues music. It's just so soulful and so meaningful, these stories. We can't get through the music part of this review without talking about the song of the film, which is I Lied to You, sung again by Miles Cutton. And this was this is just the moment where the future and the past collide and the present all collide in the barn, and how you have all of their ancestors. And it's not even just it's not even just Sammy and Smoke and Stack and Annie and all of the rest of them, Perline, all of them. It's not just their Delta Slim Cornbread. I can't get away with mentioning everybody's names because they're all so equally good. But it's not even just their ancestors that are calling forth. And of course, the rest of the black community that are at the barn. It's not just their ancestors being called from the past, but also Grace and Bo's ancestors get called too. There's some Asian ancestral costumes and dancing and people, as well as like in Africa, the straw person. I'll put some images so you know what I'm on about. But them, like the twirling straw dancers, that illusion where somebody's dancing under all the straw and it looks like a spirit, that was there too, which was, it was so beautifully done. And the fact that the barn burns down and Sammy's voice gets like shoehorned in the edit to the sound of a train whistle or a horn. So it's alerting that in this moment when everyone's so peaceful and happy, then the barn burns down to reveal for the vampires where they are and who's singing. But also at the same time, it's symbolic that happiness doesn't last for these people or soon won't, and they're actually all about to be destroyed within this juke joint. And that's symbolic through the horn, the warning, the fact that in this I Lied to You song, it starts off so bluesy and then goes into this instrumental of like, there is future beats, future music, because there is obviously the past and the future. So we have an electric guitar and a drummer and a DJ from the future. In that moment as well, there's that, it's beautiful. Like the electric guitar comes in, but it sounds so bluesy and Western. And that's when the barn's completely burnt down, and you could just see it like slowly pans out this way, and you can see everybody in the barn dancing. And it literally is, for a moment, everybody in that room was free of oppression, of slavery, of dealing with the deep South white America of the 1930s. Also, at the same time as the 1930s, the Great Depression was happening. So for a moment, it seems the world's troubles melted away, literally with the barn melting away from fire. But the world's problems melted away, and these people were just free, and they were just dancing, and they were just being human, and there was no hatred, and there was no bigotry or bias or anything that has split so much humans in today's society away from each other still. For a moment, everyone was just happy. And Preacher Boy mentions that towards the end of the film when he's like, oh, that was the best day of my life before the sun went down, or whatever it was they were saying. And it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. And it's a reason that song has gone viral on social media because not only visually is it a cinematic masterpiece, it just sounds so phenomenal and it just speaks to, I think, the social commentary about today and how certain groups are still being persecuted by certain groups. I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to get too political on my channel. I just want to talk about movies and TV shows and how much I love TV shows and movies. Of course, in the song portion, let's mention some other songs that were great. We also have Travelin' by Miles Catton and Pale Pale Moon by Jamie Lawson, which was Perline's song. And oh God, that was so good too. The way she was jumping in like agony and anger, but freedom and expression, both past and future hopes and the pain of the past and the anger that the community rightfully feels for what happened to them and their ancestors. And when she's jumping and singing and everyone's jumping, but at the same time, some guy's getting beat up for like whatever the hell happened in that card room. And like the way that Smoke, because he's such a good businessman and he doesn't want to ruin everyone's night, the way he uses that exact moment when everyone's jumping, creating so much sound to choose that moment to either think he shoots or beats the other guy up, but somebody dies in that back room because they were trying to derail the night. Now let's talk about the vampires, Remick and Joan and Bert. Their songs. I'm going to go into them as a separate bit after this, or maybe later in the review. But for now, I just want to talk about their songs as well, which was Pick Poor Robin Clean, which was a funny little jig that they did, a funny little song they did when they were talking about, when Remick was like, oh, we love equality and we love, just to spend some money. And that was Remick's way as a vampire to entice them to let them in. Because, of course, in this movie, as Annie points out, because she's so intelligent and smart, she was like, oh, the dead need to be invited in. The living can walk in themselves. And that's how the rest of the movie, for the carnage part of the movie, differentiates if you're alive or dead, because you either need permission to enter the room or the building, or you don't. And those that are seeking permission are dead. So then what else we have here from them is, so another song they did is I'm a little tiny bit obsessed with the song, and that's down to predominantly Lola Kirk's voice, and also the other two guys that sang the song. I've forgotten the name, so sorry, but they're also amazing, which is Will Ye Go, Lassie Go. That was a mouthful. Will Ye Go, Lassie Go. Another cinematic masterpiece because it's so layered, not only from the music, but narratively. This is the moment where Mary is grieving because her mum's died, so she's grieving in the film anyway, but she's so determined to save Smoke and Stack money-wise before they get bankrupt because they realize that eventually the juke joint they've opened will no longer be able to sustain itself money-wise because the people who are coming to juke joint don't earn enough money from the work that they're doing. So she was like, we need to get real money for you guys. And the only way to not cause controversy, because originally when they're singing their little Pick Poor Robin Clean song, which by the way is a great song, because the lyrics literally feels like Remick's like, oh yeah, we're going to pick you all clean. Like, we're going to kill you and pick your bodies clean, which is what the song's all about, picking some dead guy clean because they've robbed him, or his corpse at least, I think the music choices here are very good, and they very much help build the world that we're in, the Great Depression, the 1930s, the blues, the struggle everyone's facing, on all sides of the room, really, or all sides of the conversation. Most people in the 1930s were struggling with the Great Depression and not having any money. So picking Poor Robin Clean is an amazing song to showcase the example of how everyone was dirt poor, and they would pick dead people clean for either their shoes or, if they were lucky enough, there'd be money in that person's pocket that they could use. But also here, narratively well used, because they're like, we're going to pick you all clean because you're soon to die. But also here we have, as I say, it's really cinematic and layered. Will Ye Go, Lassie Go? And it's because Mary at the moment is grieving her mum, and it feels like the vampires chose specifically that song where Mary's trying to help the community. They chose that song to lure her in, almost like a siren, especially Lola Kirk, how she kind of entices Mary into staying down, and how Remick is he exudes an energy that makes people want to be around him and really can't reject him, even though they did reject him initially after the Pick Poor Robin Clean. But that was because of Smoke wanting to be a protector of the community and how he wanted to protect them, because, as he rightfully points out, if white folk come in here and one of the black people looked at them wrong, in their mind, because they don't know they're vampires, in their mind, they're thinking these white people could easily cause trouble for us, in reference to the KKK that existed in the South at that time, probably still does. But For the movie, they don't know they're vampires. So they're thinking, yikes, let's not have that confrontation if one of our community looks at them the wrong way, because they could end up very horribly wrong for them. So they reject them on that basis. Mary, being the only white passing person in the movie, says, I'll go talk to them about their money then, because I can help you guys out. And then she goes off and then obviously gets turned into a vampire. But talking about the vampires here, Remick, played by Jack O'Connell, Lola Kirk, who plays Joan, and Peter Dremias or something like that, excuse me if I've said your name wrong, he plays Bert. The three vampires. Again, I've kind of touched on it before, but the vampires here, especially Remick, is extremely clever for a vampire. And as I've already also said, there's such a unique take on vampires for Ryan Coogler in his mind, how he has made them love music and how they can sort of turn people based on music, and how they seek out people like Preacher Boy who can bring the past and future together and collide them. And that's why they turn people, because they want to build a community. And I mean, it's vampire stuff too. Like, they obviously want to kill people. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a horror movie or like some sort of thriller. But there's a longing, I think, I see in the vampires, as well as like, as much as there's a longing for the Black community at that time to be free and have freedom and have rights and be respected, I feel like the vampires long for like some sort of community. Again, I think that they're excellent, these vampires. They're manipulative, smart, and know how to play off people's grief to get them, or their prejudice. So when Remick comes up to Joan and Bert, he sees the KKK hat and he's like, oh yeah, I'm getting hunted by Indians, let me in before I get killed by the wrong people. And then they let him in based on the fact that he's white, or even though he's a vampire, he appears white, and the fact that they're prejudicial against anybody that isn't white. So they were like, yeah, we're going to let you in to help us kill these Black people or these Indian people, Native Americans. So I think it's clever that he uses people's grief, sorrow, love, any kind of way he can tempt you, he'll get you. And okay, I think I'll go into this portion of the review now, the juke joint. So the juke joint was beautifully done anyway, even when it did burn down, or the carnage that ensued there. But why was it so powerful, other than the fact that it was sold to Smoke and Stack at the beginning by a white guy who in 1930s trying to sell property to Black men, is a massive progressive step, especially in the South for America, and how it was all a devised trap, really, for them. Smoke and Stack, they go off on their own and they trick the Italians and Irish into giving them alcohol. God knows what happened there. They need their own movie for that, but for the past. But they tricked the respective gangs into thinking the other gangs so the Irish and Italians are against each other now, thanks to Smoke and Stack, individually going into those gangs to create this, create that animosity between the two gangs. But the juke joint, they used that money that they got from the gangs, from the wine and stuff they've stole. They used that to buy the juke joint, which was like a slaughterhouse, I think, for animals, which, it's telling, really, isn't it? Because the white guy who sells them the slaughterhouse that they're going to turn into a juke joint never has the intention of letting them stay there. It's quite okay to take their money and steal the money from them on the pretense that they're now business owners and that he's going to get off their land and never come back, because they say if they see him on their land again, they will shoot, which is fair enough. That's how America, I think, still goes, that they have the right to shoot somebody if they invade their land or home. The point here about the juke joint / slaughterhouse is that, as revealed in the end, the white guy that sold them the slaughterhouse / juke joint is actually the head of the KKK of that area, and he had every intention of, unfortunately, killing absolutely everybody within the juke joint by morning. So they were going to wait for sunrise, and then they were going to come in with their KKK outfits and then slaughter all of them and make it back into the slaughterhouse that it is for animals, which, of course, for racist people in that time period, they thought of Black community as animals anyway. So that's really good, again, that Ryan Coogler taps into that historical accuracy to make us sympathize with Smoke and Stack, and think that they might be getting freedom, to twist it on them anyway. And it's really sad, actually, that they all did die in a massacre, not by the KKK, which would have happened in real life, but vampires. And perhaps that is the social commentary Ryan Coogler is making as well. Perhaps he isn't, but I'm gleaming that from him. Okay, let's get on to the next part of this review, the characters. Here, the standouts, for me at least, were Michael B. Jordan playing both Smoke and Stack, excuse me, and also Mary, played by Haley Steinfeld, and Annie, Wenmi Masaku, who plays Annie, as I just said, because Annie, blah, blah, blah. But she's phenomenal. Okay, so let's get into why I think these characters are really good. So Smoke here out of the twins is the older twin, and he's very much a protector. Not only did he protect his twin brother from their father when he killed their father to protect the Stack, because Stack was getting choked out and Smoke killed him, the dad, not Stack. Smoke killed the dad to protect his twin. And this isn't shown on camera, it's told through dialogue, which is a little exposition-y, but I'm not sure every moment needs that. And the way that Michael B. Jordan acts and conveys that within both of the twins separately on different occasions when they mention it, I think it works well anyway. And with that mindset of Smoke being a protector, it feels like he's a protector for his community. You know, both of these twins, Smoke and Stack, want freedom for their people, for themselves, for their community, for their loved ones. And both of them, Smoke and Stack, have a loved one. But where Smoke is very business orientated and a protector, sort of like the dad figure, which is funny because Annie is the mother figure for this community, but and this is the difference between Smoke and Stack, where Smoke is more business orientated and headstrong, and he won't accept money that isn't going to help them. Stack is more empathetic and sympathetic, and he's like, no, these people have worked their time in the fields and in the cotton fields, and they've worked hard for the money they've got, even if it's not the right currency that we want and we use. I think it's outdated currency, not modern currency, but in the South it still spends the same. So they were like, it's like Stack is like, as well as Annie, they're both like, it's okay, let these people have a drink and enjoy their freedom because they're the people who are going to be coming back. So we need their money, regardless of this, whatever currency it is, just for the first one night. But Smoke seems to be more business orientated, and he's like wanting to protect the community for sure. But at the same time, he also shoots two of them to, when he's like announcing that he's back. Which brings me on to Stack, the younger one, potentially the more naive twin. Smoke says in the film, Sammy go with Stack to watch his back. So clearly Smoke thinks that Stack still cannot watch his back or, save himself. And in the film, he is quite naive to danger. Not only is he the one who gets turned, I think it's important that he gets turned because he doesn't sense the danger of Mary. Because when Mary, before she's a vampire, as a human, they're both naive, Mary and Stack, but Stack naively agrees to let Mary go out to the white people to try and take their money off them and bargain with them when they've already had the conversation that these people can't be let in anyway. So I'm not sure why Mary and Stack were like, yeah, let's go and get the money off them anyway, because they weren't going to give them money not to enter, or they would have wanted to come in, which would have doomed them all anyway. So Mary's naivety comes from grief, as well as wanting to help the brothers, and Stack's naivety comes from not being business smart, or maybe wise to the situation they were in. When Mary is turned and comes back as a vampire to sleep with him, and she starts drooling, which is what the vampires do before their fangs come out and they bite you and turn you. Instead of Stack realizing he's in danger, he allows Mary to dribble into his mouth, and he's like, "Oh, heart, let's be kinky together." In that regard, and that is the naivety of Stack, the younger one, more immature potentially, that needs protecting, either by Sammy Preacher Boy when they go off to get Delta Slim and Cornbread, or because he can't sense the danger that is Mary and the vampires and the situation they were in. And clearly Smoke, being the older twin, protecting him from the dad, seems to always feel like he's a protector. And I think that probably comes down to the fact that Smoke, A, couldn't protect himself or his twin in childhood until he had to murder his dad, but also the fact that his own child with Annie died as a baby, and he couldn't protect his own little baby girl, so he now needs to protect both himself, his twin, and his community. And he feels like coming back to build a juke joint and an area of business, and maybe a part of the land there that they bought, that he sees as free land, that he sees as their land, is protecting his community. They've got a safe place to go where the white people can't come and brutalize them or be racial to them or anything, because it's their land that they bought legally, even if it was all a trick. Which is the sadness that this movie does carry through. Here, I loved Annie so much. Not only was she this warm, kind, and loyal character, she was very much the matriarch of this community. We get introduced to her in a shack where she is the healer, medicinal, and she comes with all the ancestral knowledge on medicine and African culture, and the new version of the culture build starting to begin in America during that period of time. She's very caring of everybody, and again, she's in mourning still continuously, perhaps, not only of the fact that Smoke and Stack left for 7 years. It seemed to have been they left for 7 years after her child died, her and Smoke's child died. So she's sort of still in mourning as well about that. But they do reconcile and forgive each other and sleep together in one of the only 2 sex scenes, I think. There's 3 Preacher Boys with Pearline as well. There was a lot of sex in this, actually. but it was tasteful, which was lovely to see. And Annie is the one actually that points out that they're vampires. And Annie is the one that thinks that they were another type of spirit ghost before she realized herself they were vampires. And she's the protector of this group as much as Smoke is a protector. Okay, let's get into, now that I've covered the characters. I mean, Pearline was also good, but a beautiful voice, amazing singing, but a character, it's sometimes telling that the film is called Sinners because her character gave into lust and gave into, the sin of cheating, really, by Christian or other religious standards, because she has a husband and she slept with Preacher Boy, so she's committing adultery, which is a sin punishable by death. So let's get into the carnage then. This is the carnage portion of the film. So we have all this beautiful film and all this historical accuracy, and we turn it into vampires, which again I guess could be a social commentary on the KKK and how destructive they were in South and in America as a whole, and how they potentially still might be under a different name. So let's talk about them. So those who turned into vampires versus those who died. So the people who turned into a vampire was Mary, Cornbread, Bo, Stack, Joan, Bert, and everybody else that was in that juke joint. Not a single one of them escaped without being turned into a vampire. And then the ones who died are Annie, Grace, Pearline, Delta Slim, and Smoke. What I thought was especially horrific, though, was the Rocky Road to Dublin song, which again has gone viral on on social media for all the right reasons, really. But I thought it was particularly horrific, that scene, because the survivors are in a circle within the barn, standing around in a circle eating garlic to see who amongst them is a vampire, because Ryan Coogler does draw on, mythological accuracy about vampires, if there is such a thing, about garlic and how vampires don't like garlic, right? So, Annie gets a little jar of garlic and she's like, everybody eat some garlic raw, and if you don't, you're a vampire, and we're going to kill you. Or chuck you outside. One of the two, which is fair enough, really, isn't it? But as I say, what I found particularly horrific was the Rocky Road to Dublin song, because whilst they're all deliberating who a vampire is, Remick is outside starting a little Irish jig called the Rocky Road to Dublin. But Mary's got blood all down her and she's been shot a few times because she's a vampire, so she's dead, so her body no longer responds the way a human would. Cornbread has been denied entry in a very tense but amazing scene. But he's had his face blown off and he's all dead and horrible, and you can see Bo's got bite on his back, and it's horrific. These humans we spent so much time with are now dead with bites on them, visible bites, and all the people in the juke joint are all dead too. And Joan and Bert have blood all trickling down their face, as well as Remick, because they've all been biting and turning everyone. And they're all just like having a happy little jig to the Rocky Road to Dublin song. And Cornbread in particular, like being so like joyful with his hands and so free, considering Ryan Coogler builds on this word freedom and the power that it holds and how everybody wants to be free. It is poetic in a way that Cornbread finally feels free, but it only took him dying and having his face blown off to feel freedom. The fact we got introduced to him on the road in a cotton plantation picking cotton with his wife, which is serious, and the fact that that was the life they had to make do with because there was no other options for them in the Deep South in America in the 1930s during the Great Depression, how his real life wife in the film is still going to be waking up the next day if they haven't been killed and turned by Mary and Stack, but she's still going to be waking up and going to that cotton plantation and picking cotton, wondering where the her husband is because he went to a party that she didn't go to, thankfully, and he's just there like, woohoo, all dancing and happy. But because his soul is trapped, the human side of him knows his wife and his potential family are left without a father and a husband. But he's so happy because the vampire is so happy because he's singing in the night and his face is blown off. And for some reason it stood out to me, and it really touched me that Cornbread was finally free, but it just cost him his life. It was so complex, but that was harrowing for me to watch him so happy-dappy. And as I say, it's just with the song, the choice of song being of Irish descent, white descent, and him so happy because all the vampires share one mind as well. I don't know, I just thought it was haunting, really haunting, but beautiful, but haunting. Which I feel like this film is a beautifully haunting look on the past, but with a vampire twist. Also, the carnage scene here, there's been a bit of a debate online about people who are parents versus people who are not parents. I might not parent myself, obviously, but Um, so I'm on the side where Grace really annoyed me as a character towards the end. Her selfishness to protect her own child cost the lives of Annie and Perline and Delta Slim and Smoke because she was so gun ho in that moment after Remick spoke Chinese to her or Mandarin to her. In that moment, threatened Lisa, the Beau and her kid, and he threatens Grace, which spirals her. And as a parent, I want to understand that you would do anything to protect your child. But where I think the only failure of this movie lies is not because Grace invites them in, which ends in the carnage with everyone dying. It's because Ryan Coogler made her character run through open flame, set herself on fire, and stab her husband in the heart. So they're both burning, and it cuts back and forth between the carnage to Grace, and then more people getting killed, then Grace, and she's steadily being burnt alive, screaming, with the stake in her husband's heart. They're both burning together. And you think Grace has just invited all these vampires to kill the rest of the cast, which we all love and care for, out of selfishness to protect her own daughter, which won't matter anyway because the rest of the vampires, she doesn't know how it turns out the rest of the film because she dies. But in that moment, she was so selfish to sacrifice everyone else's life to save Lisa, where all they needed to do was keep the vampires at the door until sunrise, in which case Lisa would have been safe anyway, and then Grace and could go back to her daughter and give Lisa a parent because Beau's already gone. So the fact that she killed herself within 5 seconds of inviting them in, and it does nothing because the vampires all know exactly where Lisa is anyway because they share one brain. So she sacrificed everyone's life for God knows what reason. That was the only fault of this movie, I think. And of course, Mary doing them all to begin with her naivety at thinking that she could take white people's money because she was white passing. So between Grace and Mary, they really got everybody killed, unfortunately. And okay, let's talk about the ending. So Preacher Boy and Smoke do kill Remick, and he does die, and that's the end of vampires, including everybody else, the whole coven, except from Mary and Stack, who run away. And as Smoke and Stack are fighting, and it's revealed at the end, Smoke let his twin go. He couldn't kill his twin, even as a vampire form, and that is where Stack and Mary run off into the night and go seek refuge, God knows where, to do whatever for the next 50, 60 years. But Smoke's story ends with a shootout between him and the KKK, where he kills every single member, but unfortunately dies himself whilst taking out the KKK. So they're all dead, including him, but it was really enjoyable to watch him kill the KKK and shoot them up. It was lovely. It was a great scene. And then he transitions off to the afterlife to go be with Annie, and that ends Smoke and Annie's story, which is quite beautiful, the way they do end it. Of course, it would be lovely if Ryan Coogler just kept them all alive, but we wouldn't be sat here talking about what a great movie it is. It is if everyone survived. I don't think it would have been made, and I think Ryan Coogler knows that. Overall, now that we've finally finished, this is a very long review, now that we've finally finished, I think Sinners is one of those movies that is amazing and will stand out. This movie, again, as I say, was fantastic. A 10 out of 10, phenomenal. The acting is amazing, the singing's amazing, the storyline is amazing, and I really hope it does win some awards. It very much deserves to. Okay, that's my review of Sinners. What did you think of the movie? If you've even made it this far of a very long review, well done to you. Okay, see you in the next review or reaction or whatever I end up doing. Bye.